What about 315?
Turn it over.
Are y'all set to end at
That's the one of
315?
your last meeting. Is this your last meeting?
If y'all don't meet again before May 3rd, then yes.
I don't think so.
Then yes.
They're all right.
Then if y'all don't, May 3rd is my last day, so
Thank you, Jeff.
I
Maybe we should get test that combat.
Okay, so, we're gonna go back into session and, move on to contributions, rescue squad. The request from the Hawkins County Rescue Squad, they wanted to maintain the same level of request that they had last year, and Churchill has requested a $30,000 increase.
Make a motion, we fund both departments at the same level as we did last year.
Okay.
Okay, the motion's been made to fund both departments at the same level as last year, seconded by Mr. Gibson. It's now open for discussion.
Who was the second?
Mr. Gibson. If I remember correctly, they were asking for that, Churchill was asking for the increase to do some work for building.
Right. The foundation problem, even the road out back, and the river building. Some of that they asked for in the ARPA money.
Okay, question's been called for. Miss Sarah, will you call roll on this?
Who was the question? I'm sorry.
Nancy called question.
Okay.
She just didn't do it very loudly.
Call the question. When I'm looking down, it's hard to hear. Okay. So Robbie Palmer,
Yes.
Tom Kern,
Yes.
John Gibson, Joshua Gillum,
Yes.
Nancy Barker,
yes.
Danny Elvis,
Yes.
and Jason Rogers. 7 yes, motion carried.
Moving on to other emergency management, Hawkins County 911 and Hawkins County Emergency Response Team. This is an increase of a total $467,650, is that correct?
That's the new total, right?
51,188.
Is the increase.
But if you want to give the 466, that's okay.
Well, I think we're talking about the different things.
Well, yes, sir. So we've got, I read the two line items, one's E911, one's response team. We can just take 911 separate from response team if we like.
Response team doesn't have an increase, do they?
No. So, we'll just look at Hawkins County 911 right now.
I guess it's okay if I speak
Yeah,
on
you sure can, thank you.
that. 2 years ago, we informed this committee that we were working on a salary study. We did not complete that salary study until last year. Last year, our board put in a completely new pay scale for all the dispatchers. Prior to that, I guess probably about the 21-22 year, we kind of come up with an agreement that the county would fund 10 dispatch positions. And this increase is just a sole increase on those 10 dispatch positions.
If anyone wants to look at his paperwork, it pays 45 on it.
We maintain 13 positions that we pay fully for, their base pay and benefits. This request is for the county to maintain those 10 additional dispatchers, and then we still maintain those benefits. This is solely the base pay. If we did not do the additional duties of dispatch, if we solely done what a 911 center is required to do, there would be no need for these 10 additional people.
Do you already have them hired?
Yes, we're fully staffed. The budget you're looking at is last year's budget. We have not the fiscal year's running, the way y'all start your budget meetings, we do not have this year's budget started yet. I can tell you our personnel line item is a little over $1 million for this year.
What is a first year untrained dispatcher start out at for their annual salary?
1875. And we go to step 5, and I can't tell you that step. I did not bring pay scale with me. We start out at 1875.
Do you happen to know, is it like a,
Look at your phone. Yeah.
is it like a 3% increase across the state?
They are 3%. This fee comes up from an average of our, and it's a different pay scale for night shift. So this average is an average of the highest paid night shift and the lowest paid night shift. Just where the 2043 comes from. It's hard to break down what the county, who the county actually pays for and who we actually pay for because of the budget that we have to use, the budget form. But I can tell you if we took the 10 lowest paid dispatchers, it would be well above what this 466 is. If we figure their actual salaries versus just doing an average.
So if we grant this request, how will that change your starting?
It would not change your starting. This is just this 51,188 is the difference from last year versus this year on the new pay scale.
And if we did not grant that request, what would be the outcome?
This year will continue as always. We can't say that services would not decrease over time, but we can provide. I mentioned during the actual budget meeting, the first one, that my deputy director is also the TAC, which does NCIC, and she's 100% consumed just solely by NCIC work. She's not able to do any administration work at all. And the sheriff isn't here, and I'm sure he would echo it. He does not want NCIC back in his house.
Okay, so for now, we don't have a motion pending.
I'll put that in the form of a motion to request Dr. Campbell that additional funding.
Mr. Alice has made a motion to grant E911's request with the $51,188. Is that correct?
Yes.
Dollar request?
Yes.
Correct, Mr. Campbell? Which brings the total to, was it 467, 650?
I guess it's 467, 450.
So again,
467, 450.
450. All right, so that's the motion for a second. Second by Mr. Kern. Any further discussion?
You said if you did not get this position, it would not change your services?
It wouldn't change our services this year, but by next year, we would drastically have to start seeing what we can cut out. I understand that we're under a contribution request. I don't know why we're actually under a contribution request. At one point in time, we used to be a line item. But regardless of how you look at it, we're really a vendor for the county. We're doing this services because you all have asked us to.
All contributions are still a line item in the budget.
Well, I think that we used to be under like Jamie's budget or something like that at one point.
You just moved to 4,900. 5,4,900. You're 5,4,490.
Yeah, I brought that up to Eric, that was for several years ago.
All right, any other questions?
What's the increase in expense that you're looking at seeing year over year that's gonna come, that would cause that decrease in services?
Say that again.
What's the increase in expense? Like, what are you expecting to be your increase in expense?
We have NCIC, which is not our responsibility. Any two-way radio traffic is not our responsibility. Basically, any dispatching is not a 911 center's responsibility. So anything that comes along with that dispatching. Last year we had roughly 22,000 911 calls. Roughly 69,000 were admin calls, which is where this comes into play at. We're responsible for those 22,000. You've got other things, equipment. We record the county's radio channels. That's not our responsibility, but we do that. I could actually make you a whole list, but just throwing things out there.
Do the cities have their own dispatch?
Rogersville City does. This year we did ask the cities to kick in on payment for a dispatcher. I don't know if that's gonna happen this year, because we got kind of to the ballgame late on that. We did reach an agreement with Rogersville City, but we're not doing anything with them. If we receive their phone call, it gets transferred to them.
So we don't know Wolf Gap, or not Wolf Gap, Mount Wellgate, Wolf Gap, Mount Carmel, Churchill could help with this 51,000 request?
Our request to the cities was for them to create their own city dispatch position. We run 3 dispatchers and a supervisor on shift. That is a fire dispatcher, an EMS rescue dispatcher, and a law dispatcher. And then our supervisor takes up the slack or does call taking. If you look at actual standards, we're supposed to have 11 call takers and 22 dispatchers based on our call volume. Of course, we obviously do not have that. So our request to the cities was to create another dispatch position.
All right, any other questions? Miss Sarah, will you call the roll on this one, please?
John Gibson,
No.
Joshua Gillum,
No.
Robbie Palmer,
Oh.
Danny Elvis,
Yes.
Jason Rhodes,
No.
Tom Kern,
Yes.
Nancy Barker.
No.
5 no, 2 yes, motion held.
All right, so moving on to Hawkins County Emergency Response Team.
So this is for the
Make a motion to move forward with last year's amount.
Okay, thank you.
We still did something for it, not wrong, don't we?
Oh, did we not?
I mean, you denied the increase,
Motion for the
but
increase.
I don't know that by default means they're going to last year's.
Okay, so let's go back and fix that. Thank you, Eric.
Motion failed, can I just make a motion to send both organizations through that last year's funding?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made to send through contributions to other emergency management at last year's funding level, seconded by Mr. Gibson. Any further discussion?
Just a small point of clarification, that is an error on the heading of the emergency management. It should say other public safety.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Earl, will you call the roll on that?
Tom Kern,
Yes.
John Gibson,
Yes.
Danny Elvis,
Yes.
Robbie Palmer,
Yes.
Joshua Gillum,
Yes.
Nancy Barker, Jason Roach.
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Contributions ambulance service, Hawkins County EMS. Thank you, Mr. Beal.
I can't understand, can you do the best I can?
You take a lot of questions.
Appreciate you being here.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
That's why I can't
you.
do any different, if you like me to the best of my ability.
So, can you give us an overall assessment of the health of
TCRS, they've sent them to their legal team. I've never heard back, so there's very specific language that they have to have so that they are an eligible entity. Certain support and backing from the county government and possibly the municipalities, but the ball's in their court, and when I hear back from them, I'll be happy to forward it to both parties, but I don't have anything to share with you right now.
But that agreement doesn't change the cost of what we're looking at right now as far as running the organization.
No, and as far as to the cost savings that he alluded to, TCRS is still gonna look at them as a standalone entity, so they'll have their own rate. Now, how that factors into what they're currently doing for retirement, I don't know. There may be some cost savings, but they'll have to assess them and establish their own rate. They will not be in with our rate. They'll be still a standalone for the most part, but under kind of the umbrella of us, so to speak.
We're backing.
That's where.
We're backing them, but they're not with us. They're not, as a department in the budget, or as a separate fund in the budget. They're just allowing for a contribution still. But like I said, if you have the proper language in there, then they may become TCRS eligible. And as far as insurance, I would assume it'd be structured the same manner, and they wouldn't be on ours per se, but it may give them a better rate. I don't know if our broker would have any dealings with that or not, but I can't give you any definitive numbers. It's just a very slow-moving process at this point.
Mr. Elam, I'm gonna ask some questions, so don't be offended. Mr. Mayor, what's the difference between funding them and having a municipal or a county-owned ambulance service? Are we getting a savings enough by funding them through contributions versus having our own?
That's a comparison I put on paper. There's been a lot of discussion as to, do we give them funds or do we buy them a truck? That kind of thing. If we're gonna start being a joint partnership, then if we could own part of their fleet, and if something goes wrong, we've got that to pull back in. I actually think that's a better approach than just giving them funds, because I think that their intent is to buy a truck from our funds. Is that right, Ronnie?
Correct.
Yes.
That's my understanding.
So how does that work with insurance if it's a county-owned ambulance, but it's operated by an independent organization?
I would defer to Mr. Cow on this, obviously, but I don't think it's much different than the last one we bought. We own the last two that we purchased, or the remounts that we purchased, and we're the lien holder on the title. But I don't suppose, again, I'll defer to Mr. Cow, much different than your bank isn't liable for anything that happens in your vehicle if you have it financed.
So if we did not fund their extra request, but we allocated money to buy an ambulance through county funds, we would be doing the same thing, it's just the county would own the truck.
Correct.
Okay, my last question is, what's the difference between having a relationship with Hawkins County EMS, and I'm asking this because I've got constituents asking me this, and contracting with a private company?
I think when you're with a private company, you're gonna get higher transport rates, things like that. But the citizens aren't going to be able to use this efficiently, let's say. If you go to a private company, they're gonna start charging more. And I'm not saying that EMS shouldn't start charging more, but we would have no control really over a private company.
I can't speak intelligently about EMS service, but I can regurgitate what I've heard previously in this conversation. You've probably not been coming from off base or not, but the language I always hear is if you have a private company come in here, they're gonna start cherry picking their calls. And some of the calls that, they would still go service, if it's not profitable, maybe they answer it, maybe they don't. Is that not what we've heard in the past?
That's a big topic of the regional one of EMS also is to keep the private sectors out, because when you get one in, they try to take the entire area, not just one area.
Yeah, and if the two are running at the same time, if the two are running, Eric's right, the commercial service would cherry pick calls. And, they would get the ones that would reimburse them the most, and were less labor, things like that.
That's, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Wheelie is the gentleman up there. That's why he had a vested interest, even though he's not in Hawkins County. he was willing to come down and try to aid us in the incorporation of our cooperative or quasi, or whatever the proper terminology is now, because he wants to protect his region, and any vulnerability in our region is a vulnerability potentially in his backyard now.
So would it be fair to say that while, I mean, we might realize savings from county funds if we got a private company to come in reality, citizens could end up paying more out of their pockets through, that use the services. So citizens who use ambulances wouldn't save anything, even if it saves some county funds. Would that be a fair way to say it, Mark?
Or even something to the point that maybe don't get the ambulance out there to their emergency.
Right.
If you look at the history of that also, after a few years, they start coming back and asking for more money.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, being on the, I'm actually on the board of EMS, so I really can't, tell you how to vote this, because, but being in those meetings and hearing Wayne's primary responsible for the trucks and getting them in shape along with his calls that he runs. But we've got trucks that are, was it Chevys, Wayne, that
We've got, well, the two remounts that you're on, we just put a motor in one of them, and we've got a motor, we're getting ready to order a motor for the other ones. Loaded up at the garage right now. This is the third motor we've had to put in, we spent almost $60,000 to $70,000 this year in motor and transmission.
and that puts those out of service.
Plus, our
as
supply,
well.
you've got, we're reoccurring everyday cost, every tile, the medical supplies, just the price of gloves, since COVID, you can imagine the increase of that. And the medical supplies period is just the price of that.
Are you seeing any difference in how Medicare and Medicaid is paying for when you're picking up folks that's got Medicare, Medicaid, TennCare, those things? We were told that they were only paying a fairly small portion of the overall cost of it to transport, respond. Has that changed?
The biggest thing we see there is they keep trying to find ways to decrease it. TennCare has looked into there's some stuff in Congress right now to pass where they're going to Medicare minimum rates. That would help tremendously with that. You can't pay on that.
So is your bottom line profitable right now?
Right now, we're at break even, is what we're working with.
But see, there's more expenses now because there are actually two buildings that they're having to rent and keep up. Administrative office and a place to put the trucks. It's probably working out okay, but it's costing us a whole lot more.
It's costing more.
You all had some concerns about payroll, and you had some concerns about some different things in months past. Are those concerns cleared up?
And if you're on the board, I
Yeah.
feel comfortable with
Yeah,
that.
I think we're good.
I definitely not even consider looking for anything, it's just the retention with the quasi part and thing tremendously helped us.
I think the employees are pleased with the direction that EMS is going. But, I would still say, give them their money from last year and buy a good truck.
What would a truck cost?
$350,000